You want to think about the market and strategies in a way that you haven't really seen other people think about it yet. People used to laugh at us because we would short it open and cover it close. And they're like, you hold it for so long? That's so dumb. But the reason that was working so well, all this is theory. It's because
wow, this number really blows my mind. Over 75% of you who watch the show regularly are not subscribed. If you enjoy the show and want to support us, the easiest and also free way is just to hit that subscribe button. This will help us find new and better guests, and I promise you to continue to work at making this show better and bringing you more value. Welcome back to Be the Trader, everyone. Today is a very special day. I have my man Chris Shunk, who recently has crossed $1 million in trading profits, and his story is amazing. And if you don't know his story, we'll reminisce a little bit today. However, you guys check out the full episode where we go over his whole background. But Chris, welcome back to the show, brother.
Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too, man. So tell me about the challenges you faced as you got closer to hitting your $1 million mark.
This year's been it's been my best year so far, obviously. I don't want to say it's been the easiest year. It definitely hasn't been the hardest year. In terms of challenges, the hardest thing for me this year was working out the strategies that I'm currently trading. That's been the biggest challenge. Because last year I didn't make so much relatively, and the year before was a red year. So I was really losing faith in the strategies that I was trading, and I basically had to build some new ones from ground up. And that was the hardest part. Yeah.
So elaborate a little bit more on that, because I know a lot of people are facing some similar things, maybe not exactly what you faced. And to explain how you overcame that could be very helpful.
It's just work, man. It's just working as much as you can and trying to think about things in a different creative way. I was just thinking about this today. I was actually going to tweet about it. What are tweets called now? Xeets?
Right. I don't even know what they're called. I don't even call it X. I'm like, it's on X.
But it's like when we were doing what we were doing in the early part of our career, which was 2020 and 2021, everyone was making fun of it, right? Chris Verma was the only other guy we knew that were doing it. We were doing it for about a year before we found Verma. Then we find Verma and everyone's like saying, what is this idiot doing? He's like shorting the open, covering it close. He's not even like covering it drops in the day. And he's just arbitrarily shorting at the open. But the reason that was working so well, all this is theory, is because everyone thought it was stupid. I kind of took that to heart, building these other strategies, and you just kind of want to do things that you want to think about the market and strategies in a way that you haven't really seen other people think about it yet. So I think it takes some creativity.
So do you feel like without that experience, you probably wouldn't have been able to think that way? Or do you feel like you could have done that in year one?
No, I don't think so. The whole year one, it's funny because, Evan sort of found this thing that he wasn't even doing because he thought it was stupid. Why would anyone do this? And then I was stupid enough to do it because I didn't know anything about the market. So it's sort of a combination of factors. Yeah, if it wasn't for that experience, then I wouldn't be like aggressively searching to be stupid today. Like today, I'm like really trying to be as stupid as possible when I come up with my strategies from learning that lesson.
That's interesting, man. So it's like just doing things that people are just like, wow, that's just not a good strategy is your edge.
Exactly. I think so. That's when I'm thinking about strategies, maybe stupid's the wrong word. I'm trying to simplify it. I think people have a tendency to make things super complicated, especially when they're thinking about systemic trading or quant. And it's, the joke is we're trying to be as stupid as possible, but really it's making it simpler without overcomplicating things.
So how do you maintain a systematic approach, but also it seems like you're thinking outside the box though, right? It sounds like how do you quantify those thoughts?
Yeah. It's a lot of it is just random searching in Excel sheets. You get some idea, you try to test it out. It doesn't really work. You try to think about it in another way. Of course, nothing's just purely new. Like even when we were shorting the open and covering it closed, that was based off of stuff we learned from Dux and Gritani. They weren't doing it exactly like that, but they said track gappers, write the open, high, low, close. It's not just based from nothing. It is building off of other ideas, like people, just the idea of backside. Like now I'll be trading sometimes the front side, sometimes the backside. I don't know if I'm trading backside like anyone else, because I haven't anyone else talked specifically about how they trade it, but just this idea that backside can exist. That's a place to start looking. How can you quantify backside?
How do you quantify backside when it comes to this style of trading?
It has to go up a certain amount, and then there's a sort of a breaking point. It's also how Nate talks about it a lot. Like, I know he's more discretion, but he always talks about waiting for the shorts to get squeezed out, and it kind of pulls back and confirms.
Mhm.
There's different ways you can think about it.
Discretionary, like visually seeing it is one thing, right? Like I can see that too, but at the
Right.
same time, like quantifiable, like the way I see you as a systematic trader, like unless I am interpreting it the wrong way, but I'm
Right.
more curious, like how do you make that a system? Like how do you make that a
I mean
system?
that
Because I
that's
feel
the
like that's a
hard part.
challenge, right? That's a challenge.
That's the hardest part, and of course that's not something that we're not gonna bring up our
I
criteria
gotcha.
exactly, because the whole point is what we used to do doesn't work anymore because everyone, I think, started doing it. So
Of
at the same time, we want to help and give people ideas and suggestions. We
course.
also have to prioritize like protecting our edge.
Yeah.
Um, but measuring squeezing out. So
Yeah.
obviously that will be a certain percentage of something going up,
Mm.
whether it's how much it gapped up, how much it gapped up and ran, whether it came from zero and just ran in the middle of the day. These would all be different things you want to measure. The gap in runs, maybe it needs to be stretched a less amount than just a runner from ground zero in the middle of the day. Maybe you treat them differently. The first thing would obviously be how much it runs. And
Mm.
then the hardest second part is, when do you go in and think it's done running? It could be as simple as it runs this percentage and you try to predict the top, or maybe it runs this percentage and it traces back a certain percentage. That could be another way of looking at it.
Right. That's a good thought. I appreciate you sharing that because I know there's a lot of people out there who are trying to kind of convert themselves to a systematic approach, but it's so hard to sometimes convey your ideas into a systematic approach, right? Like, because maybe it's, maybe it's my ignorance, but I more so interpret that I'm going to code this approach or be able to track this approach, verbatim. Everything's completely, quantifiable in some way. And
Right.
so that is like a challenge sometimes.
Right.
So, especially for discretionary traders. So, appreciate you sharing that. You may have noticed that there are not a lot of sponsors on our show. That's because I don't believe in advertising for someone I don't believe in. And I'm very proud that Cobra Trading is the sponsor of Be the Trader. I use them every single day. And Ford's Advisor recently did an exhaustive research on day trading brokers, and Cobra Trading was the only broker awarded in 2 categories. One was, you guessed it, customer service. If you've ever experienced an issue with your broker and couldn't find good customer service, that won't happen when you go with Cobra. Sign up now using the link below, and Cobra Trading will provide you with 1 month of free software and 33% off a commission for life. I know you'll enjoy trading with Cobra just like I do every single day. Let's get back to the show. I'm curious, man, did you have any challenge like in the last stretch to hitting your $1 million in trading profits, which is amazing, man. So congratulations on that, brother. That's awesome. But whenever, was there any mental challenge for you? Right before you hit it, did you kind of psych yourself out? I'm just curious. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't.
I'm pretty good at this point in following my rules and my system. There was a point, I'm bringing up my bankroll real quick. I just want to remember when it was exactly. There was a point where I took like a 30 or 40% drawdown in my bankroll. It was during this crazy China sector during May. Yeah, in May. I remember I was on a trip in Brazil with my wife and in-laws, and I'm just losing like a third of my bankroll. I'm just feeling really bad about it. But I mean, I've looked at drawdowns in my spreadsheets and I've seen that they can happen that much. I've seen that they can happen more. So you just kind of have to trust it. There was sort of as I was getting closer and closer to crossing a mill, I was kind of like every morning I would be like waking up with adrenaline. But, you know, I didn't change any of my behavior really. I mean, that's the difference between an amateur and a professional. I think you just have to follow your discipline, your rules.
Has it always been that easy? Like, you're explaining it and people are probably listening to you explain this as if it's just like, you have to do this and it's a matter of fact for sure. But is it always like that switch for you whenever you initially started trading?
The following the rules.
Yep, yep.
It was
Any challenge with not following the rules?
it's been I think it's easier for me than a lot of people, but no, I mean I still break them sometimes. Just today actually I got out of trades early, but it's partially because there's a couple strategies I'm thinking about trashing. And so
Hmm.
when I have a strategy that I don't have full faith in, then it's much easier to break the rules. But strategies I have full faith in, I don't have such a problem following the rules.
Speaking of strategies, how many strategies do you have that you deploy at one time? Like, is there multiple strategies or do you really just focus on one?
There's like 5 or 6 right now, and I'm thinking about tossing. I think 2 of them.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Do you debate tossing one after a minimum amount of time has gone by? And what do you think about that?
I mean, this is something that I'm still pretty new at. I've been trading for 4.5 years, and strategies. If it's a good one, it should be lasting for years, if not forever. The one I'm actually even shorting the open and covering the close. I'm actually still doing it, and I've been doing this. This was the first strategy I ever did. It's much less size than my other strategies, but I am actually still doing it. It's been 4.5 years. This is also the one I'm considering just stopping and putting that money in my better strategies or just putting that money into savings. That's actually what I'm thinking about doing today. I mean, today there is that stock started with an M and it just tanked out the open. And
Hmm.
I shorted it at the open. It just tanks out the open. I was also in TNON, the micro
Yep.
float, and I was just like, I just don't have faith in these so much anymore. This idea of shorting the open and covering the close. So I got out of those early, and I'm just thinking about scratching it entirely.
Interesting, man. I'm very curious on looking back from. So for those who don't know, Chris here has been able to pick up trading at a faster pace, in my personal opinion, than most. And you've had a very very good skill, man. And just transitioning from being I think it was a music teacher. Is that correct?
Yeah,
To now a trader, and like your first year you started to find success because you just picked up the system and was like, what is this? Let me just try this. You had no idea, and then now you've just been consistent ever since, and it's really a unique approach. So it just shows people like, you were just kind of just like, let me just follow this process.
right.
Is there anything though that you feel like you've learned or you see things a little different now from when you first started to compare to now?
The biggest difference is basically instead of looking at the market in very concrete sections like market open, market close, after hours, pre market, I basically expanded my viewing of parabolics to a larger time frame. So for example, people used to laugh at us because we would short it open and cover it close, and they're like, you hold it for so long, that's so dumb. Now it's even longer than that. I'm swinging probably 70% of the time now, and I'm trying to look at bigger moves. I think it's good for smaller guys like us because you can get much bigger percentage gains, right? If you're just shorting within like a couple hours of market hours, a stock can only move so much. So I've actually been downsizing how much I short, but I've been holding things for much, much longer. And that's been the biggest change.
Nice. So it's also like lowering your risk, but also increasing your reward.
Exactly.
which is nice.
Exactly.
That's a nice. Was
Yeah.
that the intent?
That's just kind of, I didn't set out to do it like that. It's just kind of how when I started looking at the data and I started printing more data and looking at multiple days, it just was like, oh, that looks like a better idea.
You know, is there anything that you're focused on now? Like, do you have any type of, or was it even a goal to get here? Like, was that a goal to get to 1 million? And if it was, like, what is your now goal? Like, what are you focused on?
My goal is to just not have to get another job. That's always been my goal. I mean, you know, that's it. It's just, this is just a job. I don't have, my only goal now. My goal is to have enough money in the bank that I can make enough passive income to support me, my wife, and any future children. So that's the goal I have now. I want like 2 to 300K a year in passive income, and then who knows if I'll even trade at that point. We'll see.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. What advice would you have for anyone who is maybe they want to kind of change their ways from discretionary to more systematic? What advice would you have for them? Maybe a book or anything they should do to start, walk on the right path?
Yeah, this is hard. I mean, okay, for those that already know this, forgive me for repeating myself, but we started with Tim Crotani trading tickers. That is what introduced us to data tracking and Excel sheets. He gives such good information there, all the different columns you could use, all the different things you should be tracking. We started just doing open, high, close, market cap, and float. And then our first system was just shorting the open and covering it close. That's an amazing starting point. Like I said, I'm still doing that right now. I've found things that are better, but it's not to say that this doesn't work anymore. That's the best starting point. And then from there, you just keep going, look into parabolics, which Chris Verma was an amazing teacher with parabolics. I don't know how much he's teaching system trading anymore. You guys should just send him an email and see if he's still doing that. He looks from his tweets, he looks much more discretionary now, but maybe he still has his old YouTube videos of system trading, because those old YouTube videos were amazing.
Hmm.
So that would be a great place to learn also. Then there's also a couple of guys on Twitter that always give super valuable information, like GoShock. Uh, I know I'm missing other people. There's other quant traders on Twitter. Maybe I don't know. But this is I mean, the interesting thing about quant trading, and now that I or just system trading, who knows what it is, but and now that I'm one also, I think system traders have to be more protective of their edge than discretionary traders, and this is probably why there's much less information, I feel, or less teachers out there teaching it.
Hmm.
Evan and I both were considering opening up a chat room at some point, and we just don't know, because it's replicable. You can learn from a discretionary teacher, and there's no way you're ever going to be able to trade exactly how they trade, because
Mhm.
it's more like a skill. They can teach you, but it's a skill. System trading, it's hard to teach without giving exactly what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, we had this idea of teaching our old strategies, and that would be a good way to learn, but I don't know. We're just not sure anymore. Anyways, I'm going on a rant
Yeah,
tangent.
no, no worries. No worries. No worries at all. You brought up earlier that you went through a drawdown in May, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And obviously it was a bigger drawdown in terms of dollar size, but percentage, you realize it's just a normal drawdown. But has those bigger drawdowns impacted you in some way, or have they impacted your trading in any type of way?
I think that one actually, I made the mistake, which I've done a few times in my past, where I downsized my bankroll right at the bottom of my drawdown. If I was super system, I wouldn't have gotten emotional and taken money out of my bankroll. And of course, right when I take money out of my bankroll, now I'm trading with less size, and that's right when it starts going good again.
Hmm.
That's another moment in which I stopped being a robot, and that, yeah, I've done that plenty of times in my career.
So you are human.
I am human. I am.
I love that. I love it in a good way, because I mean it just sounds you're so systematic, right? And it's good that you're human too, right? Like, so could you explain, like, even though you do sometimes slip up on some discipline here and there, like, does that happen like every, like, what, like once in a blue moon? Like, we're talking like once a quarter, once a month, or could you give some perspective there?
I don't know if I just threw a random guess number out there, maybe once every couple months, something minor.
Yep.
But it's also arguable. Like there's some things that aren't completely systemized. For
Hmm.
example, taking money out of my bankroll. I haven't systemized that actually this year. I don't know how much I should take out. It's kind of just how I feel. I just took some out the other day because I just like reached a new profit peak, but then like it kept going up. So I shouldn't have taken anything out at that point because it would have gone up even more. I don't know. So that's hard to say. As far as like not going in full size or like covering too early, that's not so. I mean, that's maybe once every 4 months or something like that. That happened during the May, I think, also during that whole China sector. There was one day I had such a bad day. I was so emotionally distraught. I just got out of everything and just like quit
Hmm.
for the day. And I would have done better if I didn't do that.
Like you cut the trades too soon before your system told you to?
Yes,
And if you wouldn't have done that, what could you explain what would have happened?
the stocks would have gone down further. I was short, so I would
Oh,
have.
okay. So it would have been in your favor.
It wouldn't have been as red of a day.
So that's I'm glad you shared that because everyone thinks they have to be like perfect, right? Like that they gotta be perfect. And if I mess up, then they get like, oh, beat themselves up and then they go spiral, right?
Yeah.
Can could you have any advice for anyone out there who may be dealing with that type of issue?
Well, if you're a system trader, it's pretty easy because there's something called slippage, which you can actually build into your Excel sheets. So I have my Excel sheets that tell me how much I'm supposed to make if I follow my system exactly. And then I take off a percentage of every single trade to add in slippage, which is either me making a mistake because I'm a human, the computer making a mistake, the stop just being completely squeezed past and I don't get out exactly when I should.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I put in lots and lots of slippage, the strategy is still profitable. Then that's a strategy that I do. I don't do a strategy that doesn't account for some good slippage.
Mm.
So it's easy for a system trader. If you have a good edge, um, it won't make or break you breaking rules occasionally or doing something wrong. It's just part of it. And it can be backed up with data. You can factor in human error in your P&L sheet, in your data sheet, and see it's obviously not as good as it should be, but it's still very, very profitable if it's a good edge.
Absolutely, man. And look, man, before we start to wrap this up, any last advice for those who really want to get started, just in general, of like, I want to become a trader. Is it hard? Like, they're just nervous. Like, they want to jump in and they're just wondering, like, what do you think? Like, is it a hard thing to do? Is it easy? Like, should I just go all in? What are your thoughts?
It's extremely hard. Don't go all in. Start smaller than you think. Don't risk any money you can't make up with your normal job. Don't do what I did and quit your job after 4 months of trading. Which maybe for some, I think for me it's good because now I have this enormous amount of pressure because I don't have any choice to like go back to my previous life, which makes me work 13-hour days sometimes.
Yep.
So, but for some people it can be bad. But it's a lot. It's a
Hey,
lot of work. It's a full-time job, and it's extremely hard.
so speaking of that, because the full time job part, they think systematic. They think, you know, I'm out. I don't do
Yeah.
anything. I just push a button. Everything works. I print money, and I am not even at my computer at all.
Yeah.
Could you explain what it's like for you?
Well, I've gone through multiple phases. In 2020 and 2021, there was one period where I was working 2 hours a day, still making six figures. That was
Yep.
one period of my life. But that was just the market was easy, the strategy was working, blah blah blah. And then there's another period where I'm working 12 hours a day and I'm losing money all the time. So, I mean, it's it's hard to say, but I mean, for the last like year solid, I've been working all the time, and it's just trying to find new strategies because the other ones weren't working as well as we wanted them to. System trader, obviously, you just press a button. You don't really have to do so much in terms of trading, but I'm constantly going through data and trying to find new edges. I mean, that's
Mm.
that's that job. I don't have to, and maybe maybe I only find something good literally 2% of the time, but I have to look all the time, because when you find that 2%, it can change your life.
Well, look, Chris, I appreciate you so much, brother, and sharing this information. If people have more questions and they want to learn more about you, where can they find out more?
Just my Twitter, Chris_Sunk, SUNK.
Perfect. Thanks, brother. Well, look, man, I appreciate you being here again, and I appreciate you. And not only that, but congratulations again, brother.
Thank you.